Hello Destiny 2 community, it is me, Alira, and I want to get into a topic such as the whole divinity nerf discussion and my whole opinion on it. The reason why this whole opinion, or this whole debate even started was from a man called Saltagrepo, who simply stated that divinity should need a nerf because it's just overused and it makes the game way too easy. Before we go into any more discussion, let me say that the reason why Destiny 2 was never that hard is because it was never meant to be hard. Destiny 2 is an MMO light. It's meant to be accessible by all people, even at the highest of endgame content. We all need to understand and accept that. I understand the need and want for mega hard endgame content coming from Final Fantasy XIV Online. I truly understand that. FF14 Online has 60 player raid content, such as Destiny just has 6. That being said, Destiny 2 was never meant to be a hard game. Going further, the person who made the whole discussion, Saltagrepo, some backstory and insight on him, is this person and his raid team have gotten world's first on the past 3 day 1 raids to come out, so respect to them. Congrats. But also, the whole viewpoint and further elaborations on this topic seem kind of elitist and top-tier gatekeeping. With that out of the way, anyone who sends death threats to this person are a bunch of losers and need to get a life. Let's continue. Let me ask a question. Why should Divinity be punished for the way Bungie designs their game? The reason why a lot of people use Divinity is because 1. Bosses move around the arena way too much. 2. DPS phase happens way too far from the boss for any other kind of debuff to be applied. Unlike Tether, you can apply Tether to them. And 3. Damage phase isn't short enough for any other kind of debuff to actually stay long enough. Or to be used. The ones that are too far away are probably the ones that move around the arena too much. So my whole opinion is I don't think Divinity should need a nerf. I think it's fine exactly where it's at. If Bungie's gonna do anything, I think we need more options. Hey guys, Future Lear here saying when we needed more options. Anybody remember when we had particle deconstruction for LFRs and fusion rifles, and breach and clear for grenade launchers? No one used Divinity during the times of those being active. I just want to point that fact out. So I do heavily double down on that fact, saying I do think we need more options for 30% debuffs, other than just Divinity, Tether, and Tractor Cannon. But yeah, back to the video for debuffs, because we only have 3 30% debuff options in the game currently, and that's being Tether, and that's being Tractor Cannon. You could put on Orpheus Rig for Tether, which gives it Mobius Quiver another shot, so that makes 3 in total. And most bosses are going to be too far away for Tractor Cannon to even work. We just need more options. I think Divinity is fine where it's at. Let me go ahead and go to the whole tweet options on what Saltagrepo said. Divinity nerf discussion. Hey, this is going to be a thread. I've been thinking about a way to nerf Divinity for quite a bit. The gun is basically mandatory for most boss encounters, and it makes aiming a non-factor, which is very unhealthy for the game for multiple reasons, such as removing most of the skill gap during DPS and making precision weapons way too easy to use, and forcing high-risk, high-reward weapons such as Whisper of the Worm out of the meta, since they simply can't be buffed, otherwise they would be S tier due to Div removing the risk aspect. Let me talk about Whisper of the Worm real quick. Whisper hasn't been meta for the past 4 years, due to it just being absolutely broken for the infinite damage that it had. Whisper in its own right needs a buff to itself. The Whisper is just outperformed by legendary LFRs, and even Outbreak Perfected outshines Whisper of the Worm, which is super sad to see. Not even Whispered Breathing for Whisper of the Worm does any justice for the gun. So I don't think Whisper of the Worm is a good a good take to be using against Div, considering it hasn't been meta for the past 4 years. But that's my own opinion. I think Whisper of the Worm needs its own buff. That's it. But the whole reason why I think a lot of people use Div is because of the way Bungie designs their game. Most bosses, like I said, most bosses move around and are too far away for other debuffs. I don't think the whole majority of people using Divinity is to hit their shots easier. I believe they're just using Div for the debuff. The only time I can ever think of people using Divinity to hit their shots easier is on Rolk. That man moves way too much. So, unless that's what we're talking about, that is the only time I can think of Divinity being used actually for easier access to crit spots. Let me talk about Divinity Bubble. The Div Bubble itself is the debuff, while Divinity highlights the whole target as a crit. And there's another thing he talks about for that. To those telling me Div doesn't trivialize aiming, you still have to hit the bubble. I don't know what to tell you, no words really. For that, yes and no. You do have to hit the bubble in order to get the debuff on the enemy. But what it does is if you do happen to miss the bubble, you still get yellow numbers on the entire enemy. But in order to maximize Div, you still have to hit the bubble to get that overall debuff on the enemy. So yes and no. Going forward, my last thoughts are I don't think Divinity deserves the nerf that people are saying that it needs. It's in a fine spot. Why should Divinity be punished for the way Bungie designs their game? It's the same thing with Shadowkeep when they buffed snipers 20%, and after Garden of Salvation came out, they reverted that buff, I'm sorry, because it was just too easy to use for everyone, which I think was a little unfair, considering it's the way they designed their raid encounters, but that's just my own personal opinion. And that's also the reason why they nerfed Izanagi's Burden, which was a little silly, I think. But that's just me. So final thoughts. No, I don't think Divinity needs a nerf. I think this was a whole fun topic to talk about. And for the overall base of the game, I just think we need more options for debuffs to enemies. Because one person still has to give up doing damage for Divinity to work. So that's 5 Guardians out of 6 doing damage, while one is just applying the constant debuff. But my overall take is just no, I don't think Divinity deserves the nerf people are saying it needs. I think that doesn't do it any justice. If they do nerf it, which I really don't want to see happen, I don't want to see them give it the anarchy treatment. I really don't want to see that happen. The gun is fine. I think this overall need to nerf Divinity is a little silly, considering it's the way Bungie designs their encounters. War Priest, example, moves around the arena too much for Tether to actually stay procced on him, and damage isn't short enough for Tether. That's why Divinity works there. For Oryx, you don't really need Divinity. It's just nice to have. Templar, you don't really see people using Divinity there, because that's a boss that stands still. Damage phase lasts as long as the person stops Templar from teleporting. And 3, Templar is super close to actually be using Tether and or Tractor Cannon. Like I said, it's just the way Bungie designs their encounters. Divinity does, again, I'm just beating a dead horse and going like a broken record. Divinity doesn't need a nerf of any kind. It's fine where it's at. But that's it. So thank you for tuning into this video on some idiot ramble about the whole Divinity nerf.